The Baltimore Ravens look to extend their preseason winning streak to 24 games tomorrow as they take on the Philadelphia Eagles. We talk about which players to watch throughout the entirety of the preseason for the Ravens here, coming up next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in here to another edition of Locked On Ravens. We're your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, and I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here as always on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much, as always, for being here, making us your first listen each and every day. We're free and available all podcasting platforms, including in video form on YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL, plus linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We're back at It's Purple Friday, 1 day away from the Ravens getting on that field. It was only preseason football, but hey, it's better than nothing. I know we're excited for the Ravens to get out there, and here to talk about that and so much more with me today is former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver and, of course, a Super Bowl champion, Qadry Ismail. And Q, we made it. Essentially, we went through the entire Lamar saga up until April. We've been waiting, and I know the starters aren't necessarily going to play, or at least not all of them, but it feels nice to have Ravens football on the horizon here.
It does. I think there's so much excitement when it comes to this team this year, the way in which the offseason went, and it was a soap opera. The back and forth of management versus player, and now you see some of the free agents that have been signed and some of the big names. We've seen a glimpse of what they can do big time throughout training camp, been here or been there out to the castle and have seen them practice so many times. But now you get a chance to go up against another team, a pretty good team too, in the Philadelphia Eagles, clearly making it to the Super Bowl. I'm sure they're going to have a lot of high hopes, defending their NFC East championship as well as their NFC champion as a representative of the Super Bowl. So I know that this kind of is that turning point. Tomorrow's going to be dress rehearsal, and then game on come Saturday evening. Sit back, buckle up, let's go.
It's exciting, too, because I know there's the big storyline of Baltimore having the 23 straight preseason wins, and that game, it's the game against the Atlanta Falcons in 2015. 2015 was their last preseason loss, which is absolutely incredible. And it's not like they're trotting out their starters every game, Q, and playing everybody for 4 quarters. They just have had depth, and it's gone the way it has. But in terms of this preseason, I know there are a lot of players that people are excited to watch because there are a lot of players that Baltimore's going to have to rely on to take a jump, young guys that are going to play much bigger roles this year. So who are some of the guys that you're kind of looking forward to? Because I think for me, you kind of wonder how much is a guy like Odafe Oweh going to play? How much is a guy like David Ojabo going to play? I'm super excited for the rookie class, but who are some guys you're looking forward to see?
Well, I think the obvious starters, as John Harbaugh alluded to in his press conference the other day, that they're not going to play, but I think there's some other guys who are some young guys that need to play. David Ojabo needs to play. He hasn't had that much experience. He hasn't arrived yet. He hasn't made 6, 7, 8, 12 sacks in a year. He hasn't done much. We've seen the promise. That's great, but he needs to play. When you look at Isaiah Likely, he doesn't need to play much, but he needs to play. My guy, Charlie Kolar, definitely needs to play an awful lot. When you look at the offensive line, of course, Ronnie Stanley, Kevin Zeitler. I mean, goodness gracious, as much as Tyler Linderbaum is wet behind the ears, is as much as he has a ton of experience in game against some big-time defensive tackles. I think we know what he can do. Don't play him either. So we're going to see a lot of different offensive line combinations. That left guard spot still unsettled. Let's see what John Simpson and company can do as far as holding down the offensive line. But I think the biggest spot, and one that is almost dare I say, Devontae Freeman-like is defensive back. There's a lot there, Kevin, when it comes to the different defensive backs. Watch them more than any other group this entire training camp, the times that I've been out there and viewing. And right off the bat, the consistency of them flat out just simply catching the football in drills. It is something that I have not seen consistently from any other group that I've seen in quite some time. And I don't say that lightly because defensive backs can't catch. There's like one or two guys that are like, oh, yeah, he's a sure-handed guy, darn near can play both ways. But from a defensive back standpoint, like, this is going to be fun. I think, there's been a lot of pundits that have been, oh, who's out there? Oh, what free agent? Oh, what this? Oh, what that? But I think this group is hungry. I think this group is determined. I think that they want to show they belong in the NFL.
Yeah, and I know with snaps available at multiple different positions, I think, and very valuable snaps, not just like a couple here and there, especially as you talked about at the corner position. I know we talked last week about it, Q, and you said that guys like Jalen Davis and Pepe Williams, I know we'll talk about Pepe Williams in the final segment, but this is an opportunity because training camp is one thing, preseason is another. And obviously you keep going regular season, postseason, whatnot. But this is a time for you to go up again. If you're a guy competing for a roster spot or a guy competing for snaps, going out there and proving you can do it in live action, full speed football against another team. And I think that's part of it too. I think the Ravens playing every team's players are just ready to go hit somebody else. They've been practicing against each other for the last couple of weeks here. But one player I'm really excited to watch here, I guess one position battle actually is quarterback. Not Lamar, obviously. That's a given. He's going to be the starter, no doubt. But Tyler Huntley is somebody who I know we've speculated a lot on what his future could be in just where he fits in both short-term and long-term. Josh Johnson appears to have kind of taken the third spot from Anthony Brown too. So I think that's a battle to watch as well. What's kind of your take on the backup third, fourth string quarterback position right now for Baltimore? What you're looking for?
I think it's interesting. T. Martin being a quarterback coach, obviously him being a former quarterback, played at a high level himself. The quarterbacks, and you look at, again, Tyler Huntley, I think the experience that he has as far as playing and winning games, obviously going back to the Bears game a few years back when literally Lamar was like, I ain't playing. I don't feel good. Something ain't right. And of course, it was coming out both ends and woo. But the way in which he performed, it took him a minute, but then he finally warmed up and he was able to make some plays. I think at the same time, the downside of it is we also saw the Cincinnati game where, like, all you had to do is just do your job and, sneak the ball over the end zone, and you ain't even worrying about being a backup. You're a hero for the rest of time. We're not even talking about Josh Johnson. We're not even talking about Anthony Brown. Like, you're the guy, and you're going to be the guy that beats the guy. So, yeah. You got to prove yourself. I like him a lot. We talked about Josh Johnson. The thing is he has so much experience. He's been in situations and circumstances before. I think this preseason game, not to belittle it, but I think he's going to think it's a joke in that, yeah, bro, I played games. I went against first-team guys. I've had teams game plan against me, and he's had success too. I think ultimately when looking at Anthony Brown and, his play and the way he felt like he was confident. It was Anthony Brown, correct me if I'm wrong, who was played against Pittsburgh last year, correct? Like,
yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Like, I understand he didn't have, the fullness of the game plan because obviously just limited amount of reps and so forth, but he went in there, he played strong. Like, I don't see him flinching either. This is a good problem to have. Like, of all the problems to have, this is a good problem to have. Give me some guys that all feel good, all feel confident. I know we're not talking about, the 23-game win streak as a thing, but we are talking about a 23-game win streak as a thing when it comes to backups. And when it also comes to guys who, from a depth aspect of things, and I care about how I look so I could possibly be on another team if I'm not on this team. I think it helps. I think it helps out big time if I'm a wide receiver. I got any of those quarterbacks. I know Lamar's going to be sitting on the sideline, but I got some guys that have had experience that I feel like I can go in a game and they're going to get me the ball if I'm open.
Yeah, and you mentioned some of those wideouts. I think for guys like James Prochet, Tylan Wallace, Dante Demas, Laquan Treadwell, all guys who are kind of competing, because I assume Baltimore's going to keep 6 wide receivers. Q, I think 1 through 5 is pretty short up. You can kind of assume the top 5 are safe. The 6th wide receiver, though, that's the guy that I'm really excited. So there are about 4 or 5 people competing for one spot there. You mentioned Isaiah Likely, Charlie, even Travis Vokalek. I think those 3, though, I think Kohler and Likely are locks. There's no way either of those guys get let go. But Vokalek is someone who has done a really good job, I think, in training camp so far. Offensive line, you mentioned the left guard position. But I also feel like, the rookies, like where does Tavius Robinson factor in the outside linebacker rotation? Caillou Kelly, how does he fit in with guys like Jalen Davis and Kevon Seymour? And where do they use Brandon Stevens? That's one area I'm really interested to see. So I'm going to be watching Brandon Stevens for sure as they kind of ramp up stuff. And then I'll kind of transition in the second segment with this cue. Patrick Ricard and Ben Mason. Those are 2 guys who we all know Ricard is kind of working in a new role right now. Are they going to play him a lot? Are they going to play him at left guard? And then Ben Mason seems like a guy that they really like. So do they utilize him as an inline tight end? Do they use him as a fullback maybe? So those are all players that I'm personally watching. But coming up in the second part of the show, we'll be talking about Q's latest training camp notes, what he's seen out there, and a lot more. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty to talk about on Locked On Ravens. But first, this episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. And these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs lets you find the right people for your team faster and for free. And there have been so many people, myself included, that have used LinkedIn Jobs to find careers, find team members. There are plenty of positive experiences, and it's definitely helped me out a ton. And it's really easy to create a free job post on LinkedIn Jobs. You just add the job and the hashtag purple hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. They have simple tools you can use, like screening questions that make it easy to focus on the candidates with just the right skills and experience. So you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and who you'd like to hire. And sometimes the right team member can help you start off the year really strong. That's really important to start the year strong. Despite small businesses, right, LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires as leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs lets you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to you faster. Post your job for free at LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We're back here, our second segment of Locked On Ravens here on this Purple Friday, the day before the Ravens take on the Philadelphia Eagles in the first game of the 2023 preseason. Kevin Oestreicher still here with Qadry Ismail and Q. I want to just segue right into what we talked about at the end of that first segment with Patrick Ricard. I know you've been out there, you've been watching and you've been listening to everything. Ricard's working with the offensive line now. It was kind of unexpected. Like I kind of wondered what his role was going to be in the Todd Monken offense. I didn't have him working with the offensive line on my bingo card. What have you kind of seen from Ricard so far as he's kind of working in that new role since coming off the PUP list?
Can I just be humble and say very little? Because it's a hard position to transition to. Like, he's doing a lot of watching and like, okay, all right, this is what I got to do. All right. He's clearly intelligent, going from defensive language to offensive language to tight end language. Now you're going to offensive line language. And for those who don't know, I mean, that's like listening to a New Yorker talk about Boston, then going out to Cali, and then going down to Alabama. You're like, okay, all these dialects, what the hell are y'all saying? So that's what he's doing. And it's hard. And so I just haven't seen much. And that's okay. I mean, I'm sure. I don't think he's going to. There are 4 million reasons why I think he has an uphill battle ahead of him, and there's going to be limited opportunity.
Yeah, I don't know where he fits. Not to say he's not going to be with the team. I kind of talked about this throughout the week. But when he signed that extension with Baltimore Q, I think we all knew that was a Greg Roman extension. You know, he worked in Greg Roman's offense, and I know we had talked about it, and we had kind of said, well, if Greg Roman ends up leaving, whether it's this year, next year, whenever, and they bring in a new guy, what's his role going to be if the offense starts to transition more to a pass-heavy offense or the personnel switches up. So I think there still can be a role for Patrick Ricard. I think everybody kind of knew that once Todd Monken come in, Ricard's role would be greatly diminished. Now, the Ravens, if they release him, would save about $1.7 million on the cap this year. If they release him next year, I believe it would be $4 million. So maybe you hold on to him this year, see what the role is, and get rid of him next year if it doesn't work out. Or maybe they just really want that flexibility, because I do think they like Ben Mason a lot. And I think that Mason offers a more versatile pass catching role than Patrick Ricard does. I think Ricard is the more versatile player overall and is a better blocker overall. So it's just a matter of maybe what skill set Todd Monken wants. I don't necessarily see both being kept on the roster. That'd be crazy. And maybe we come back in a couple weeks and we're saying, remember when I said that wasn't going to happen? Look what happened. And then they proved me all wrong. So I don't know.
Well, the proven wrong is that, Ben Mason costs less than $4 million and Patrick Ricard cap hit $4 million. So you do the math. We're not talking that Ben Mason is the level of Patrick Ricard when Patrick Ricard is a Pro Bowl guy. But he's a Pro Bowl guy, as you just perfectly said, in a different offense. So if it's a different offense, he's not the guy any longer. And so therefore, it's going to put pressure on him to try to fill in and see if he can garner a role. Now, I don't really see them having a blocking tight end. Now I have a blocking tight end. It's Patrick Ricard did so much, but your cap number, that's the name of the game.
And for right now, you're not going to see as much heavy personnel because you've brought in Odell, you've brought in Zay Flowers, Nelson Aguilar, you still have Bateman and Duvernay, and obviously whoever that sixth guy is going to be. So I would expect 3 tight ends to be on the roster, and that is Andrews, Likely, and Kohler. And then at the very most, one fullback type player, fullback / tight end, I guess I would call it. Whether that is Ricard, whether that is Ben Mason, I think Todd Monken is going to have to make that decision based off what skill set he wants more than the other. I mean, Patrick Ricard is not a practice squad player, right? I'm not going to disrespect him like that. Ben Mason, maybe you could sneak him on the practice squad and then kind of have him as a call up on game day if you need. But they're going to have a big decision to make on Patrick Ricard. But another big thing that happened, Q, was Rashod Bateman coming back from the PUP list as well. I know people didn't really know when it was going to happen. Luckily, it did happen for Baltimore on Wednesday. I know there's definitely still going to be a ramp-up period. Don't expect to see him in the preseason whatsoever. But based off of what you've seen, how's he looked so far? And what's his process to kind of getting back on the field in week 1 as good as he can feel?
So it's a ramp-up, and I think that's important to note. So it's not that he's going out there and they're putting him in scrimmage situations. It was the full padded practice earlier this week that I was at, as well as the non-padded practice. But it's just ramping him up, just kind of getting him back in the flow and a groove, not trying to, I think, stress that foot, see how he looks. The fact that he went through the padded practice, came back again with another practice, that to me says an awful lot, because it shows that, my foot, it's not 100, but it certainly is a scenario where I can have multiple practices and I can function. I'm fine. Let's go. I think that's important. I think that's what we're seeing. And he looks good. Bateman's not looking sluggish at all. Like there's like a quickness, in his burst and in his movement. So be it. Let's go. Let's see it.
And to me, I think that it's okay to have this be a ramp. I mean, even Odell's ramping up at this point. You want to be cautious with your players, especially just coming back off the PUP list. And it kind of raises the question of whenever in the world J.K. Dobbins comes back, what is his ramp up going to look like? Because we don't know where he is in the recovery and how he's feeling and how much of it's a hold in. So I know we've been talking about it, Q, is like, well, Dobbins will probably be more of the guy and Edwards will probably be more of the backup. But if Dobbins doesn't come back until a couple weeks before the season or a week before the season, I think that Edwards is going to have a pretty big load of that backfield early on until they can get Dobbins up to speed, both physically and just, getting him up to speed on the new offense. But based off everything you've seen in training camp, I know there was a lot that was made about that Saturday practice key where they threw 9 interceptions. And then we kind of got some clarification. Isaiah Likely said, well, look, it was 3rd and long. It's kind of scripted for the defense. Now, you don't want to see interceptions at all, but I think it did provide like, oh, okay, this makes a little more sense why this happened. Marlon Humphrey even said, hey, the practice was designed for the defense to win, and the defense won it. But who's been catching your eye so far at the practices you've been to and what you've seen?
So offensively, you talked about a ramp up, and I literally just see Odell picking up right where he left off, even though he took a year off of football. I love the way Isaiah Likely, all he does is just catch the ball, period. Doesn't matter if I'm with the first team, doesn't matter if I'm with the second team, doesn't matter if whomever is out there, I just catch the ball. Yeah, Gus Edwards, he can catch. Like I was like, wow, homeboy's catching out of the backfield, and he's looking good at doing it. Lamar, there are like little nuances. He's giving some hand signals. He's doing some certain things as far as some certain looks at, I don't want to bore you with the esoteric, but, he's showing that, yeah, this offense is about whether or not I can progress, and I am progressing. The offensive line, it's like interesting when they don't have pads on. I think they get a little frustrated. But when they do have pads on, I think they got a little nastiness in them, which is good. I just love the way the defensive backs are catching the ball in their drills. And so it doesn't surprise me that it translated over on the field. I think linebacker, guys that like Malik Harrison or Jeremiah Moon, heck, Delshon Phillips, that dude, it seemed like he's always in position to make a play. Christian Welch, all these guys, like they looked the part. But then you got, your big boys in Roquan and Patrick Queen. So in the padded practice, they were doing a lot of scrimmaging. And you could tell where the coach was like, all right, let's stud it up. I know the Ravens production team put like a little montage of all the heavy hits. Well, they should have also put a montage of them talking junk and swagger to the other team, as in the offense, because, the offense was getting like a little ticked off. In particular, Mark Andrews was like, yo, bro. But they weren't having it. They're like, what's up? And I love it. I love that they were having that moxie. I love that they are having that swagger. I ain't tripping. I love like how you could see this linebacking core, they're out for blood. And that's a good thing. The D-line, like, okay, we got depth. I mean, man, Travis Jones, I guess I want to see more. Eric DeCosta was hyping him coming out. I know he kind of had a little something with his knee in the preseason. I know we talked about it last year as far as, him going down the line and then, a guy kind of taking out his legs and all that. And, that was tough. But I don't know. I just want to see more from him. Is it my imagination, or is Michael Pierce like, holy wow, talk about a reincarnation of Sam Adams? My goodness. Can Broderick Washington be the new Buddy Lee? Like, boy, oh boy, oh boy. I'm telling you, you go ahead and talk about, we need this on the outside rush. And, yeah, let the inside collapse and there's nowhere to go. And all of a sudden, you're going to have a Jabo and Owe feasting on the outside because teams are going to be running right into them. Those are the things that I saw out at practice.
Yeah, that's incredible. And the fact that, to me, I think you have a common misconception about the pass rush is that it's only the outside linebackers, where obviously that's not the case. You talked about the defensive line, who gave you great insights there, where, guys like Justin Madubuike and Broderick Washington and Travis Jones and Michael Pierce and all those guys are going to step up in a big way. And we'll transition with that into the final segment. We'll talk a bit about Broderick Washington getting his money and also getting into the cornerback position and a little Jadeveon Clowney too, sticking with that pass rush theme. So just stay tuned. Still a lot to get to on Locked On Ravens. We are back here, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with Qadry Ismail, and stay tuned for the end of the show. There'll be a couple of announcements, so you won't want to miss out on those. But I want to continue talking about, you made those great points, Q, your observations, and especially about the defensive line. Broderick Washington got money. He got paid a 3-year extension, $17.5 million in total money, $10 million guaranteed. And this is a trend, right? We've seen Baltimore extend some of their players over the years. I mean, we can go back. Nick Boyle, Tavon Young, Patrick Ricard. They've done it with a lot of their guys to kind of get them, I'd say probably below market value, but a fair deal for both sides nonetheless, a year or maybe two before they hit free agency. Washington is someone who had a lot of growing to do, but grew really fast into a really solid role for them and is going to play a really, really big role for them this year. And is one of the more underrated players on this defense, in my opinion. So what was kind of your reaction to the extension, and how has he in particular looked to you so far in training camp?
So I was not surprised because, Baltimore, they look present and obviously they got to look future. He was showing up. This is a guy who was a 5th-round pick and just solid. Like, he was showing up. He was making plays. That's a guy you want on your team. And I loved his interview, how he talked about, his mom did so much for him and, him putting himself in position to really just, succeed. I was thankful for him, and obviously the way in which he was able to reward his family. 1, 2, the pep in his step after the extension was really cool. I loved it. And I was at that practice. He looked like, I'm floating on sunshine. And they even called him out. So I think he broke down the huddle at the end of practice, which was so cool as well. So, I just think, when you get an extension, guys like him, it's so cool to see.
And especially the reaction part of it is the best part, where he's worked so hard, he's earned the money, and is going to be a big part of the Ravens team for the next couple of years here. So again, big congratulations to Broderick Washington and his family on that. But Q, we're going to talk corners again. We've done it seems like, for the past month, every single episode. Some corner storyline comes up. Now, the one that happened yesterday was Pepe Williams gets carted off the field. We don't know too much about it right now. But with Rock Ya-Sin already out for a little bit, with the uncertainty surrounding Pepe Williams, John Harbaugh called the corner depth a concern, and feels like maybe they'll want to add someone. Now, the issue is that there aren't a lot, if any, needle movers left on the market, because we are in August. We're not in March, when there are a lot more options available. So depending on kind of where, it's different for everybody. Some people view the position as give the young guys a chance. Other people view it as they need to bring in a veteran and make a trade. My stance on it is, if they go the young route, I think you have to have at least 2 of your guys step up and be really, really good. And that's before factoring in injuries. The thing, though, is that if you want to bring in somebody, which I think they probably should, the issue is that if there's not a guy that moves a needle for you, I would rather just go trust the young guys, because at that point, at least you're seeing what you have. So I know we've talked about it a lot, but what's kind of your panic meter on the cornerback position now, knowing there are a couple of injuries they've had to deal with so far?
My panic meter is at medium. I don't know. I do know why. I mean, I've obviously had my fair share of joint practices back in the day. It was like an annual thing, Kansas City versus Minnesota and blah, blah, blah. We would go to Kansas City's training camp. Kansas City training camp would come to us and all the things. And, when I was with the Saints, we went to Dallas, and it was I guess we were at a neutral, some stadium, maybe Louisiana Lafayette or something. We scrimmaged against the Denver Broncos, I believe, before their game against us. My bottom line is this: when you go up against another team and you get these situations put upon you, it's literally, tougher than a preseason game, because it's a 3rd and 8. Everybody knows it's 3rd and 8. Your 3rd and 8 offense versus their 3rd and 8 defense. Your 3rd and 8 defense versus their 3rd and 8 offense. My O-line versus your O-line. My inside run versus your inside run. And things can get chippy. So all of that is really where I think next week is going to be as pivotal as it gets to see where this team really is at from the depth standpoint of defensive back. Let's not sit here and do conjecture. What good does it do us until we know? Of course, we're going to see them go up against some receivers for Philly, and it might or might not be as cool. But let's go ahead and check out that practice. What is it, 2 days worth of it all? And then we'll know, because then you'll be able to either validate the Philly game one way or the other, or you'll be able to say, there's this continual growth. I think they're going to be okay. So that's where my personal measurement of hitting the panic button or all those cliche terms, I'm not ready to look for, Devonta Freeman of the secondary. Let him stay in retirement, okay? Maybe we should name a fish after him. Who knows?
Maybe. That's a little hint coming up. You want to stay tuned for that. But I feel like, if we're talking, why not just let Devonta come in and play corner? You go sign Devonta to play corner, and that's it. We'll get to talk about him. That 33 is a corner number. He wore 33, although I think Melvin Gordon has it now, so I guess he couldn't wear it. But when talking about, I think, additions, Q, something that you said there was that, you can kind of let the young guys figure it out during the practices and reassess after 1, the preseason, 2, the joint practices, which I definitely agree with. And to add to that, I think once cut down day comes, there will probably be 1 or 2 solid options at corner that do get cut just based off teams not needing an abundance of corners. So maybe there's more on the market then, so you don't necessarily have to rush to sign somebody now and there's a better option for you. But speaking of options, outside linebacker wise, pass rusher wise, I know the Ravens have been in contact with Jadeveon Clowney. He visited the Ravens. Reportedly there's an offer out there for him as well. Clowney's kind of taking his time. How would you feel about Clowney getting added to that linebacker room of Owe, Ajabo, Tavius Robinson, Tyus Bowser, and being able to kick inside and play some defensive line too? If you're watching the video, you see Q's face. If you're listening, I will say it was not a very encouraging little facial expression there by Q.
No, I think chemistry is everything. I think if you're, one of those guys that are going to be, jerking around, talking bad about, a guy who is Myles Garrett, okay, he's a number 1 overall pick. He was a number 1 overall pick, but he was top 2 or something like that, whatever.
He was 1. He was first overall.
He was first. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, the point I'm making is he was first overall. So what? You was first overall too. When he's first overall and he's still on that same team and he's kicking some butt, then okay, he's going to get some favor. It ain't up to you to be trying to be acting like, the coach is this or the coach is that. Nah, homeboy, you got to keep your mouth shut and play ball. Get the double-digit sacks, and then you could talk smack. If you got to set the edge so bad that, man, nobody wants to run on you. There's a reason why he's out there on the street, and that's up to Eric DeCosta and them, but meh.
It's a move that I think would, you have Clowney, you have Kyle Van Noy. Those are kind of the top 2 in terms of production. Now, what Clowney can do is he can set the edge very well. He is a bit inconsistent as a pass rusher, but you mentioned, I actually didn't know until earlier this week, he has not hit 10 sacks in his career. He's had 3 seasons of 9 or 9.5 sacks, but there's also been the injury where he has only played 1 full season in 9 years. So you're going to have to account for some missed games. I think it all comes down to what versatility the Ravens want. Do they want inside, outside linebacker versatility with pass coverage, which I think Kyle Van Noy can give you, or do they want inside, outside versatility with defensive line versatility where Clowney can set the edge. That's what Clowney brings you. So I think the Ravens, it'd be nice if they brought in somebody. I think Kyle Van Noy is the better cultural fit for the Ravens. I think he's more of a leader than Clowney is. You mentioned the kind of weird year Clowney had in Cleveland, but we'll see what they do. Clowney's mulling his options. The Ravens do have that offer out there, but John Harbaugh talked to the media yesterday and said that they're still in contact with some other guys. So we'll see how the Ravens operate in that outside linebacker room. But Q, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for hopping on. I do want to give a couple of announcements here. First of all, my 4-year anniversary for Locked On Ravens is Saturday. So tomorrow, which is crazy to think about. 2019, Lamar's MVP season was my first year doing it. So of course I was responsible, right? I was the one who brought on that MVP season.
Yeah.
But the other one is that on Monday, it's going to be we're moving backgrounds. We're going to be moving away from the beach if everything goes right. If it doesn't, obviously I'll still be here at the beach. But if not, we're going to have a new setup here on Locked On Ravens. I've had this setup, ever since I started. So it'll be a change, but I'm excited for it. And obviously what won't change is Q will still be hopping on this show, talking Ravens with me. I've always been appreciative, Q, of you taking the time for me here and giving your insight and then the friendship we've been able to forge here. It's really valuable to me. So I want to say thank you for everything. And I'm looking forward to many more amazing conversations with you as we head on here to this 2023 season and obviously beyond.
Well, I will say this, that Bikini Bottom, telling you, it's been awesome to be able to have it, the consistency of knowing that we're going to have an awesome podcast. Again, if Lamar's season was MVP and this year you are going to have a newness, then it's going to be MVP part 2. So, yay!
If that's what it takes, I will move setups every year, and Lamar can win MVP every year. So if he wins MVP this year, I might have to change it up again next year. But I appreciate you, Q, again. Thank you so much for hopping on, and thank you for tuning in to Locked On Ravens today. We will be going live after tomorrow's preseason game after the fact, so be sure to turn notifications on. You can subscribe on video form. Also, it'll be available after the fact in audio form, so be sure to subscribe there as well. I'll see you right back here on Monday on Locked On Ravens for our normal show, but I'll see you here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens for our live stream after the fact. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.